two, three.
Now you talked about some good things, how it opens up, but you don't have to be mentally have a mental health issue for it to help you to your production better. So when you're talking about it being mental health, is it helping like schizophrenia? Is it helping like how is it helping you as far as mental health issues go?
The big main one is, well, there's a handful of main ones, but the big ones are generally anxiety and insomnia. So, like, you think about typical anti-anxiety medications, they all work on the GABA system. Why people feel more sociable when they go out drinking is because their GABA activity goes up. So Amanita hits that same system. So it can lower inhibitions, it can kind of calm the waters of the mind and not let those negative thoughts go running rampant. I mean, it seems to also like really gently nudge people towards very pure thoughts, or thoughts that are in line with love and compassion and their highest and best self. But yeah, anxiety and insomnia are the real big ones that not most people, but a lot of people start with. But then it's also, it has a ton of efficacy for things like depression or PTSD.
I was just
I
going
think,
to say depression because depression and anxiety go together. But anyway, go ahead.
yeah, exactly. And I think, PTSD is a heavy hitting abbreviation or word, but I think that the majority of, I mean, really everybody has trauma. We all have trauma since our birthing in this world, and it's one of the best modalities and substances to use in conjunction with working through anybody's own individual issues. So like it helps people, yeah, very gently and yet effectively.
Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Christian Rasmussen, founder and CEO of MN Nice Ethnobotanicals. And Chris and I are going to be talking today on the topic, the Amanita Effect, healing, hope, and the rise of legal plant medicine. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
You're very welcome. Yes, I am. I am so happy to have this unique conversation. I'm all about new content. I'm all about putting out new information to my listeners, and I'm all about learning myself as we go along. All right. So this episode is going to have some big words, and I'm going to try to pronounce them. And if I do it wrong, then I will have it in the show notes so you guys can just go and see the correct spelling of it. Okay. So that's full disclosure. So let me give you guys a brief introduction. Christian Rasmussen is the founder and CEO of MN Nice Ethnobotanicals, a leading U.S. source of ethnobotanicals. 10 years ago, he was losing his fight with benzodiazepine addiction when he discovered the Amanita Muscaria mushrooms, which helped him in his recovery. That discovery not only saved his life, but it also inspired him to embark on a mission to change how we talk about mental health and healing. Today, Christian is also the host of the Amanita Effect podcast, where he shares his knowledge and experience on plant medicine, science, and entrepreneurship in this field. His story bridges personal transformation, the science of plant medicine, and the reality of building a mission driven business in a controversial space. Yes. Now, before we ask anything, mushrooms, is this part of the psychedelic world?
It It's maybe in a sense. So Amanita, the mushroom that we deal with, it's technically not psychedelic. It is psychoactive, meaning it changes brain chemistry. It changes, it alters how one feels, but it's not psychedelic in the sense that people are going to be getting visions and so on and so forth. You know, it's very different. So we, in some sense, we view it as a bridge into that world for people that are maybe looking to get into that world, but really when it comes down to it, it's a bridge into healing and into evolution of the self. So yeah, and technically not psychedelic. Some people lump it in,
Right.
but
I'm thinking when I hear mushrooms that it's psychedelic, but then your bio or anything didn't say that. So I just had to, my curiosity had to be there. But that was not part of what I was supposed to be asking you. So that just came out. All right. So I want to start from the top. 10 years ago, you were fighting for your life with this. I'm not even going to try to say that word again, addiction. Can you tell us how you discovered the Amanita effect and what changed for you after that?
yeah. So I was a poly drug user, an addict in my 20s, and I was utilizing opiates, and then I was utilizing benzodiazepines. And benzodiazepines are your typical anti-anxiety medication. So you think of like Xanax or Klonopin or Ativan or Valium. And they're known in many circles to be the hardest substances in the world to get off of. Actually, benzos and alcohol are the only two substances that are around these days that one can die from the withdrawals. Like a fentanyl addict can't die from the withdrawal from fentanyl, but benzos and alcohol can kill you. And benzos are generally looked at as so, and we abbreviate it with benzos. Benzos are generally looked at as so bad because the withdrawal can last for years. I know people who have been off of them for 9, 10 years, and they're still like not necessarily bedridden, but it's hard for people to get out of their house. It's hard for them to do things because it damages two very important systems in the brain, and those are the GABA systems and then the glutamate system. So GABA is your inhibitory system. It's what alcohol hits. So when you get that relaxed feeling, it's because your GABA increases in the brain. Um, and so if you have an excess of glutamate, which is your excitatory system, and a diminishing of GABA, you're essentially in like a panic attack 24/7. So yeah, it's not fun. So that's what I was experiencing when I got off of benzos. It was in 2019 that I got off of them finally, after a few years of tapering down off of them, which is a whole nother discussion in and of itself. But so I was essentially in panic attack 24/7 with a bunch of horrible body symptoms. And it's like panic attack times 50 or 100. And it was a year into this, and I was, contemplating ending my life. It was just too brutal. My marriage was failing, like everything was falling apart. COVID just happened. It was like perfect timing to do all this. Um, and it was a year to the day. So it was September 16th, 2020 that I was on a hike, and which was 1 year to the day after I got off of them. And there was this patch of mushrooms growing. And I'd always known what Amanita was, but I'd never tried it. There was a lot of like horror stories online about people consuming. Now I know it's people consuming way too much and like having a bad experience. Well, yeah, and that makes sense. Everything's dose dependent. And there was this like extraordinarily potent magnetism towards them. I liken it to when you meet somebody and they're like a future partner of yours or a future really close friend. There's like a pull towards that individual. Like it's palpable, it's tangible. And I felt that to a degree that I'd never felt it before. And there was this like I like to say that the mushrooms spoke to me, because in some sense that's what it felt like. But there was just this deep, deep knowing that they had something for me, and in return I was going to do something for them. And so I picked them, and I went to the house, and I did a bunch of research. And throughout my research, I found that they hit the compounds in Amanita hit the GABA system and the glutamate system, the two systems that benzodiazepines damage. And there was one woman online. There's only one person online at this point in time that was talking about them, claiming that she utilized Amanita to heal her brain after going through benzo withdrawal. So, and like I mentioned, I was done. I was ready to check out. So I was like, screw it, I'm going to give it a shot. And I tried it. And I was just microdosing, like really low doses. And I took a couple, smaller doses throughout that couple week period. But by the end of the 2 weeks, it felt to me as if I was like 70 to 80% healed. And I was looking at like 5, 6, 7 more years of this at the rate that I was healing. And not only did I feel so much better when I was microdosing, but I stopped at the end of that 2 weeks and I was still better. I took a few weeks to start like dabbling with it again, and I stayed better that whole time. So to me, it was as if it rebalanced and rewired and brought homeostasis back to my damaged GABA and glutamate system, which was a miracle to me. It was as if I could breathe again. I was drowning for, a year. And yes, it was 6 months later that nobody was, I've always been an entrepreneur, and nobody was, nobody was selling these in the States, and there was this little growing budding community around them, and everybody needed a source. So I found somebody in Russia and started importing them from overseas, and then it's grown to be this whole crazy global brand. But yeah, that's the quick inception story, and yeah, it saved my life for sure. Yeah.
Wow, I like that word too. Inception story. Nobody's ever come on this podcast and said that. But one of my favorite movies is Inception, and I was listening to it. I was watching it again not too long ago because I love that inception idea. I plant an idea and someone said, "So that's beautiful." But I have a question. You said you saw these mushrooms growing. So it's not in a pill form. So how did you start using, and when you talk about I'm just a very curious person. How did you started using these mushrooms? Did you boil it? Did you just eat it? What happens?
Yeah, so originally I was brewing them into a tea, and the method, and one can just, you're not supposed to eat them when they're straight from the ground. Like that will get most people sick. But once you dry them, it's generally, it's much more palatable at the right dosing. But then I was brewing it into a tea, so you just boil the desired amount. For me, I was microdosing like a half gram or something, two to three times a day. So I just put it in a pot of water, add a little lemon juice, boil for 20 minutes, and then I'd strain and drink. Yeah. Yep.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. Again, I'm coming from a very curious place always, but yeah, that was the second thing that I just popped into my mind. Like, how are you using that? Wow. Um,
Yeah.
so that's pretty good because, boiling a plant and straining it and drinking it, that is amazing. And that is a great inception story. I'm going to keep using that word because I love it so much. But that's a great inception story. Um, and I love what you said about you're saying some good words that I'm feeling. I love when you said that you just was drawn to this mushroom and you know that you had something for the mushroom and the mushroom had something for you. Wow. I mean, that's very deep because we're not thinking that plants has a soul or anything like that you can be drawn to. But what you're saying is that is, not the conversation for today because that's highly spiritual. But I love it. All right. Now there's another word here that a lot of people heard about the psychobin being used for underground mental illness and addiction treatment. Even shows like 60 Minutes has covered it. But the Amanita Muscaria is different. Can you explain why Amanita is emerging as, and there is the word, a legal psychedelic alternative and how it works?
Yeah. So psilocybin is the typical magic mushrooms that everybody thinks about, and they can elicit visionary experiences. They're psychedelic, meaning they give one visions. Really, psychedelic means it works on the serotonin system, but we don't have to get into all the pharmacology of it. But Amanita, like I mentioned, it works on completely different systems in the brain, so it has a completely different effect. Most people, if they're utilizing the doses that most people are using, which are microdoses to low doses, they're not going to really feel any different. Maybe a little bit more relaxed, maybe a little bit more open. When you get into larger doses, there's a more pronounced relaxation and a grounding, and thoughts kind of flow a little bit freer. It's a potent neurotropic, so people are able to think a little bit quicker and more effectively. Verbal fluency can go up, things of that nature. But yeah,
Oh, those are good things.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's very very different than psilocybin. And then the other aspect of this is it's legal, where psilocybin is not legal, or at least in the majority of places. So it gives, it's safer, obviously, to use as far as legality goes, and it's much more accessible for like professionals and people that that we work with a lot of therapists or doctors that are looking for alternative methods to heal, and they can't utilize psilocybin, or I mean ketamine is becoming more of a thing because it's now you're able to prescribe it, but a lot of these psychedelic or psychoactive substances are illegal, so doctors can't work with them. So this one opens up the doors for that, for a lot of professionals, and then a lot of just regular average individuals as well.
All right, so that's amazing. So we're talking about how this helps mental health. Now you talked about some good things, how it opens up, but you don't have to be mentally have a mental health issue for it to help you to your production better. So when you're talking about it being mental health, is it helping like schizophrenia? Is it helping like how is it helping you as far as mental health issues go?
The big main one is, well, there's a handful of main ones, but the big ones are generally anxiety and insomnia. So, like, you think about typical anti-anxiety medications, they all work on the GABA system. Why people feel more sociable when they go out drinking is because their GABA activity goes up. So, Amanita hits that same system. So, it can lower inhibitions, it can kind of calm the waters of the mind and not let those negative thoughts go running rampant. I mean, it seems to also like really gently nudge people towards very pure thoughts, or thoughts that are in line with love and compassion and their highest and best self. But yeah, anxiety and insomnia are the real big ones that not most people, but a lot of people start with. But then it's also, it has a ton of efficacy for things like depression or PTSD.
I was just
I
going
think,
to say depression because depression and anxiety go together. But anyway, go ahead.
yeah, exactly. And I think, PTSD is a heavy hitting abbreviation or word, but I think that the majority of, I mean, really everybody has trauma. We all have trauma since our birthing in this world, and it's one of the best modalities and substances to use in conjunction with working through anybody's own individual issues. So like it helps people, yeah, very gently and yet effectively work through their traumas and their issues, which, if we have an experience that affected us in childhood negatively, like that experience ripples out into everything that we do. And depression and anxiety get caused from those types of things. So I think really at its core, it does a really wonderful job at helping individuals heal the root issues that are affecting their mental health at any given point in time, and that could stem to any mental health issue, whether it be schizophrenia or OCD or PTSD or whatever it may be. Like if we can look at and address the root issue, we can have ripple effects that completely change our lives. So that's where it really shines. It's great at like helping somebody, be more sociable and not get stuck in their head or be a little bit happier. But where it really shines is helping people address the root issues that are affecting them. Yeah. Yep.
That's great. That's great because it opens you up. It's almost, and I'm sure you know about ayahuasca because apparently that's what ayahuasca is supposed to do. It's supposed to open you up and so that you can get into yourself and you have all these different things. And that's a mushroom too, right?
Ayahuasca is it's actually a mix of two plants from the Amazon. One, it contains DMT, and then the other is an MAOI. I won't get into all the pharmacology, but yeah, it's not a mushroom. It's two plants.
Not a mushroom. Okay. All right. I guess I thought um they were putting it in the psychedelic bundle, but obviously, right. Okay, all right. So that is amazing. So you often talk about the importance of storytelling in destigmatizing natural remedies. Why does sharing lived experiences matter so much in how we talk about mental health and healing? So your story was an amazing story. So do you have some other stories or another story you want to share about how this natural remedy can help somebody instead of going through 10 years and they're still suffering.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many stories. I think first off, storytelling is so, people, the average person goes by anecdotes. So they go by like, if your friend or a parent or whomever had a great experience with this, like you're much more willing and wanting to try it. Where you think of like professionals though and doctors, like they want data, they want hard data. Like they can hear all the anecdotes, but it's not going to change their stance or opinion, which is I see the benefit to it. It's also problematic at times as well, because it takes so much more for a system to change when one needs to, pump a bunch of money and time into research, which is it's complex, and that's another discussion. But yeah, I think storytelling anecdotes are so important. There's been so many, like we've seen thousands of people get off of benzos and alcohol utilizing Amanita now, and all those stories are beautiful. I think to discuss the kind of like that core effect that I was talking about earlier, I have a really good story. In the beginning days, I was hosting a monthly Zoom meeting for just people in the community that needed, insight or wanted help throughout there or wanted to discuss their experiences. And there was a woman that came on, and she was on a month-long microdosing protocol, and she was 2 weeks into it, so she was halfway done with it when I met her. And she, we're all talking in the meeting, and she's like, I just I feel like something's changed, but I don't know, I'm not sure, like I can't put my finger on it. And I was like, okay, I gave her some pointers and some ideas. And one of the big things that I told her, as I tell everybody to do, is watch your thoughts, like watch how you think about things, because yeah, often people really often don't watch their thought processes, and it's hard to tell. Things take time to change. If your thoughts change all of a sudden, there's like a delay in how it manifests into the world. So that was the big piece of advice that I gave her. And journaling is really good for watching your thoughts. And the next month she came in, and she was 2 weeks off of her protocol. So she had finished her month-long protocol, and she came into the meeting and she was beaming and glowing. She said, I figured out what it was. That voice in my head that was always critical of myself, it's been gone. But I didn't realize it because, I wasn't watching my thoughts, but then I started journaling, and then her life started like completely changing and turning around. And it took some time, like once you change your thoughts, it takes time for the world and for your body and everything to manifest. But yeah, that was a really cool one that I like to
Yeah,
share.
that's beautiful. Right. Wow. That's beautiful. To have something that allows you to, because, you know, they say that is not what somebody did to you, is how you respond to it. Right. That is important. And and you're right. It's a big number of us that have some kind of childhood trauma or even youth trauma or even young adult trauma. We all have trauma. And what keeps us stuck is is our reaction to it. We keep playing it in our head. Like, this woman had a critical voice in her head, and she was probably just repeating something someone had told her, right? So if this drug is allowing you to think differently or open up the pathways of your mental health, so you're not in the cycle of the brain trying to keep you safe because it's something that you always did and done and things like that. That is great. Now, you had mentioned that psychedelics were not legal. I'm not sure of all of them, but I've heard that it's being opened up. Like a lot of psychiatrists and psychotherapists are starting to use it because it is helping people. So, I mean, the fact that yours is not exactly a psychedelic, or not yours, this Amanita Muscaria mushroom is not exactly a psychedelic, and it's legal, and it's a bridge. That's a beautiful thing, right? So, as consumer interests grow in botanicals for mood, focus, mental balance, where do you see the future of ethical plant-based wellness heading?
I think it's just going to become more and more prevalent. I mean, I hope that at some point it will be kind of the first line of defense in the healthcare system. I think, the world has provided us with a solution to every ailment in nature. And I think that, there's been a growing disdain, we'll say, for the current medical establishment. And not saying that Western medical isn't great. Like it has many, many, many benefits. Of course, it's saved countless lives. It extended our lifespan. However, I think that when somebody has especially with mental health, somebody has an issue, well, let's give them a pharmaceutical that has a bunch of different side effects and, can worsen the issue or cause suicidal ideation or whatever it may be. I think that people
Those
starting
drugs
to
are terrible.
yeah, yeah,
And,
exactly.
and you mentioned ketamine. That's also a killer.
Yeah, yeah. And that's another thing. And that's a synthetic. It's a synthetic analog. It's a synthetic compound. And I think that we like to hijack nature thinking that we have dominion over it, and we create these compounds that end up, in the end, generally always being much more destructive than they are beneficial. So I think that people are kind of waking up to this, and the more that we get these anecdotes and more people trying them and telling their friends and their parents and their kids about how their life was turned around by trying this mushroom or this brew from the Amazon or whatever it may be, like the more people will accept it. And so I hope within the next 20 to 30 years we'll see this as really like the go-to. And I would hope that we'll have healing centers all over the world, and we'll have different modalities for healing and for growth, so that people can, be better parents and better siblings and better kids and better friends. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. So that's pretty good. So, is there you mentioned about microdosing several different times. Is there side effects if you do this wrong? And you mentioned that also now you're importing it from Russia. So talk about how people are supposed to be using it. Is it still a dried mushroom, or brewing it in a tea, or do you not guys put it in a pill? And how would somebody start this safely?
Yeah. So we import from all over the world. So Amanita is mycorrhizal, and what that means is it grows in symbiosis with tree roots. So it can't be farmed. We can't get a warehouse and grow them. It has to grow in a forest with pine trees. So we import from all over the world, which is also kind of fun because that means no big corporation can come in and just grow a bunch and take over the industry. Like it has to be wild forage, which is cool. And we put them, we put them in capsules and gummies and tinctures and chocolate bars. We sell the raw caps themselves also, but really any delivery method one can think of, we have it. We're releasing tea bags here soon, which will be fun. But yeah, and generally for microdosing, people will start with just one capsule or one gummy or one dropper from the tincture, and they'll do that 1 time a day up to 3 times a day, and that's it. Very simple, 1 to 3 times a day, 1 unit. And then people sometimes will want to explore with a little bit larger doses, which starts getting a little more of the relaxation and stuff. But the majority of people are just microdosing. And yeah, very simple. 1 capsule 3 times a day, 1 to 3 times a day. And yeah, good to go.
So if someone decides, well, all right, I want to get a high from this, and they take, instead of 1 drop, they take the whole thing, is there a side effect? Or that they're stoned or high or relaxed or whatever? Is there a medical side effect?
Yeah, I mean, so it does. I wouldn't call it getting high, but in really large doses, it has a trip associated with it, but it's not super pleasant, and not everybody's gonna like it. There's small amount of people that really enjoy it, but the majority of people aren't. So the majority of people are just taking very low doses. Now it's not dangerous. One would have to eat tons and tons and tons of mushrooms for an obscene amount for it to actually get dangerous. But most people don't like the large doses, so we don't recommend that for anybody. Yeah, but with the low doses, the side effects are the worst thing we ever hear is I didn't feel anything. And if that's the case, or I didn't notice any difference. And if that's the case, then it's generally an issue with dosing, and one just needs to take a little bit more. But the actual side effects are like relaxation and an increase in mood, and generally pretty positive side effects. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like the ones that I just mentioned here: focus, mood, mental balance. Those are all good things. All right. So, you built M and Nice Ethnobotanicals into one of the leading U.S. sources for botanicals. What has it been like, building a mission-driven business in such a controversial and misunderstood space?
Yeah.
For example, you know, um, y- the person that booked this podcast said that Instagram, shut down your page because of what you're talking about here. So yeah, it's very controversial, and you're going to get a lot of pushback. So how have you been dealing with that?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, so like, merchant accounts, which is like credit card processing, like they don't like what we're doing. So it took a while to really get that all dialed in. And yeah, we've gotten, banned from Instagram countless times. And it's just kind of one of the aspects of this type of business. We also, there's pushback from regulatory, like the FDA has had some recent pushback. Which is back to the discussion of like we really need hard data. So we're funding research currently, which is very expensive and very time consuming, but it's a necessary step. There's such a great community too, that we have customers that donate to our research pool every day. So like we have this growing pool that will, at some point really help uh, legitimize this use as an actual viable option for mental health or whatever it may be. But yeah, there's been a lot of pushback. I got wrongfully rated in 2023. That was pretty crazy. They thought that I was selling psilocybin, the illegal mushrooms, which I wasn't. And yeah, so that was a whole ordeal. It was a very, very stressful, traumatic experience for myself and for all my employees. But yeah, but the thing is, like, and after all that happened, like I made a public statement, and part of that was look, like, I know firsthand the good that these mushrooms did for me. I know from all of your guys' stories, because we get multiple emails every day that are pages like thanking us for, their lives changing. And so like my whole thesis was like, if that's what it took to like help keep this medicine out, like I'll take all the slings and all the arrows if I have to. Like I know what we're doing, and I know the impact that we're having, and like that's a life worth lived for me. And so yeah, I'm willing to go up against whatever. But I think, with doing things like this and getting more out in the public and having our collective voice as a community and as a company be heard more and more, like that, those kind of pushbacks are getting less and less. And we're starting to actually see this be legitimatized, which is really, really incredible. So, yeah, I'll keep trudging, I'll keep walking through the tall grass to make that path for anybody behind me. So yeah, it's a blessing and an honor. It's not easy. Like there's been a lot of difficulty, particularly we run the business differently than like most businesses. We're not like, we don't see people as competition. Like we work with everybody. We want to build everybody up. We're ethically driven. So like sometimes profit margin, like we probably should charge more, from a business perspective, but like I would rather have, any individual be able to afford microdosing and like make a little bit more money. Ethical sourcing is really important, and that sometimes causes kinks and like, in our supply chain, but like I'd rather be out of something for a little bit than get a product that's not like, ethically sourced. And so, it's just navigating from the heart as opposed to from, the pockets. And that's like, it's such an important thing for us, particularly when we view this as like sacred medicine, and that's a whole nother spiritual discussion, but it's a sacred mission to me. So like, I'm going to do everything that I can to do it right so that we can continue helping people.
Yeah, I mean, the story that you started off with, we didn't spend a lot of time on it, but the story that I have actually never heard that. I thought personally that when you're looking at drugs, that crack was the worst part, the worst thing, because it changes something in your brain and never goes back, and you're always a crack addict. But I've never heard about, the benzodiazepine addiction, and that 8 years into the thing and you're still suffering. I never even heard of that. So I'm not even quite sure. And you said that's part of opioids, right? Is that why we have such a big opioid epidemic that you can never, is that part of opioids? But that's probably an easier word to say.
It's different. It's different than opioids, although a lot of opiate addicts use benzos in conjunction. It's like Xanax. Like you think about Xanax, and the problem is they're prescribed. I think it's like 10, 20 million people are prescribed these, and most of them aren't prescribed daily, but I mean a large, large, large amount of them are. And it's not every single person getting off of them that has such a bad experience, but the majority of them, it's extraordinarily hard. They're really hard to get off. Like you can't just cold turkey. You can't just stop taking them. That doctor needs to medically wean you off of them over like a period of years, because you can get seizures and stuff and like die. It's just, yeah, they're really, really nasty. And we're finally starting to see doctors become aware of this. And that's the most tragic part.
Finally
Doc-
seen. They have to know that.
it's crazy. It's great. I mean, they'll know that you have to wean people off over a period of time, but they didn't understand the severity. So doctors were just handing these out like candy. And in the past, really kind of simultaneous to us starting the business, we started some documentaries started coming out about this, and like it's becoming more and more known. But yeah, it's still a really big issue. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So that was my biggest mind blown from our conversation today. That yeah, that you can have you can't get off. But I've actually, because I've interviewed several psychiatrists that talk about these mental health drugs. I mean, there's this one guy that said something that was so profound. He says it's like having a mosquito bite and cutting off your arm, because he's saying these drugs are so nasty. But so that's why he doesn't prescribe them. But yeah, I mean, I would much rather have my anxiety than to be stuck in that loop for, all these years and not being able to get off these drugs. So again, we are one of the reasons the podcasts are so popular is that, you know, experts like you come on and educate the community, right? Because now someone that's listening to this, and maybe they're popping Xanax like a Tic Tac, right? You see them, you see these movies where somebody's got this Xanax in their purse and they're just giving it to somebody. Okay, take a pill. It's like a Tic Tac. I mean, because they're carrying it around, and they're doing it to calm themselves down and things like that. But yeah, these pills and these drugs are, don't get started because you can't get off of it. And I heard someone recently. Now, we know that the guy from Friends, Chandler, died of a ketamine overdose, right? And then I think they said that Elon Musk is a ketamine addict. But I recently saw that people are recommending it. I'm thinking, what's going on here? It's becoming a drug of choice. Maybe they're doing microdosing, but I mean, I would run from that, whenever there's bad things about it. So, but yeah, this was very educational to know the fact that these drugs that these doctors are prescribing, writing a prescription, it's not illegal. Writing a prescription or getting people stuck, even the opioids, they're getting it from the doctors, right? And the pills and the pain pills, which everybody had addiction to. I'm not sure if it's the same thing. But the fact that, yeah, you've got a safer something that's grown, and I love the way that you said it has to be grown with pine trees in the forest. That means nature is building it up, and it's getting certain things from the pine trees and from the ground and from source. It's all very good, and people take marijuana because they said it's from the ground. But same thing. It's supposed to be good for you. All right. So any response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of just that same discussion. Like we're shifting, it seems, collectively and as individuals into a lifestyle that's more in alignment. And it's tough to see a lot of the times because things are chaotic right now in the world, maybe more chaotic than they've been, and at least in my life for sure. But
It's around the
but
world. It's not.
yeah, yeah, and it's but when I really like hone in on it and tune into it, particularly I'm at a interesting position because I get to see it day to day in my business and what I do. But it is very apparent that collectively, like something is bubbling up from inside all of us, and that's this like shift back to like a better, more harmonious way of living with ourselves and with the earth. And like you see, people talking about mental health and people talking about healing and people talking about growth and trauma and so on and so forth. And like that to me is a beautiful sign that we're moving towards a more like harmonious way of living. And whatever I can do or we can do to like help aid in that transition, like I'm just so happy and honored to be able to help. So
Well, that's great. You've got a mission and it's a purpose. Um, Again, you said that in your inception story that you were drawn to the mushroom, that you were doing something for the mushroom is doing something for you. That's a very spiritual connection. That meant that, it's part of your purpose. This is what you're supposed to do. That's why you're here. And maybe even your addiction was part of the process because if you weren't addicted, then you wouldn't be here right now. So it's just like, somebody coming on my show and said they're now a coach for widows because they lost their husband. It is the inception story. It is why you're here, and that's your testimony or your test for your mission, and this is your mission. So that's pretty good, and you're running it from a heart-centered place and not a profit-centered place. And I'm following this guy now on Instagram and not Instagram and YouTube, and he's talking about if your heart is right, then the money will follow. But if you go after the money, then it's not going to work. So yeah, your heart is right, and the profits will follow. So continue doing what you're doing. Now, tell our listeners how they can learn more about N Nice Ethnobotanicals and the Amanita Effect, your podcast, and you said you're not on Instagram anymore. I don't know if you have any other social media that anybody can follow you, so you can share that here.
yeah, we are on Instagram and it's MN as in Minnesota, MN Nice Ethno. If somebody types in MN Nice into Google, you'll find us. You can type my name into Google, you'll find me. YouTube, the podcast is the Amanita Effect. So Amanita Effect. And yeah, we're over all platforms. We just like every now and then Instagram will ban us and we'll have to start from fresh. We haven't had that issue in like a year though, so I'm really hoping that we're in the clear now. We'll see. We might have gotten to a point where we're like too well known. I don't know, but yeah, and it's for a while, which is great. But yeah, if you type my name or Emma Nice into Google, if you type by Amanita into Google, like we'll be, if not the top, one of the top. Yeah, yeah.
It's great. And what's your website?
It's MN dash nice dash ethnobotanicals.com.
Wow. All right, Christian, this has been a fabulous conversation. I learned so much about this industry and about your what do you call it? The centers in your brain that gets affected. Was it your gamma and what was the other one?
It's GABA and then glutamate. Yep, GABA and glutamate.
GABA and glutamine, right. I learned about that and I learned about the benzodiazepine addictions and all these things. Yeah, and then we learned about the Amanita Muscaria mushroom. So that is great. And one of the things that someone that's suffering need to latch onto is hope. Hope that there's something out there for them to heal them from, massive anxiety and wanting to commit suicide and not being able to go outside, or all these things that happen to people when they're not living their best life. So I'm glad that you've got a mission, you've got a purpose to bring this you know drug. And I like what you said. It's almost like CBD. At one point in time, CBD was bad, and now it's in
Yeah.
everything.
That's a great analogy, actually. Yep.
Yeah, it's in everything, and they have it. I mean, I don't think there's any CBD tea, but they have the gummies and they have the tinctures and like I said, the rubs. They've got it in everything. Anyway, you can edibles. They've got it in all different ways that you can consume it. So that's what you're doing with your mushrooms. And anybody that's that's suffering from any of the mental illnesses, or even if they're not having a problem with mental illness, but they're having a problem with focus, you know, people that maybe can't meditate, that they have the monkey mind, things like that. This is gonna bring them down to level.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. All right. So I really appreciate our conversation. I will have a transcript of my conversation with Christian on the show page, which is myhelps.us. I will link out to his website. I will link out you said you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yep. That's the Amanita Effect. Yep.
Amanita Effect, right? I will link out to his YouTube channel. And also, I will tag you on Instagram when the episode is live. All right. So, all right. So I'm broadcasting this. We're like on the mountaintop now. With a bit of one of those I remember what you call that thing that you just broadcasting. Yeah, megaphone. Right. We're sending it across the world, and hopefully we will be helping a whole lot of people. So thank you, Christian, for being on the show. As we wrap up, any last words?
No, no, I'm just, yeah, again, I'm really appreciative for you and for all that you do, and for, allowing me to be on your platform and opening up your audience to me and to my message. So thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. And you also have a podcast, the Amanita Effect podcast. Do you interview guests? You interview, people that are using, what's the format of that?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So we actually just started getting it going recently, and I'll interview. It's mainly about Amanita, but then it's really all things plant medicine with the heavy focus on Amanita. It's actually more so all things healing than anything else. Like that's what it's about. It's about healing and then the evolution that comes from healing. But yeah, we've focused largely on Amanita, and yeah, we'll interview customers or friends of mine or clients or foragers and suppliers, and really anybody that's had experience with it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes. So you guys go check that out. I'll also link out to that on the show page. So you can, if this is your interest, go check that out. All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. This was a fabulous conversation. I hope you learned as much as I did. And definitely check out Christian on Instagram, YouTube, his website, and order some products if you think that it meets any of your needs. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks, Christian, for being on the show. Until next time, namaste.